G'day viewers, my name is Michael and welcome back to Single Racer. And now, after initially being disappointed at missing out on the chance to grab the beta of Automobilista 2 when it first came out, I was informed today that by Mike Smith over at Sim Racing 604 that because of the coronavirus and other problems with getting the game ready, they've decided to open up the beta again. This is Reza. For Automobilista 2 to be available either as a beta in a discounted price on the 31st of March or a full beta if you elected to join the beta program on their actual website. And after making sure I didn't let the opportunity pass me by again, I made sure I grabbed it this time. And I just excitedly want to give you my very first impressions of what I think of the sim, but not from the point of view of a professional. You know, Chris Hay and Sim Racing 604 and others have done that already, but I'm talking more as an amateur channel and in some senses an amateur racer. And so how would I sum up in one word my first impression of the sim? Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I'll even throw in two words there for you. Honestly, I think it is absolutely fantastic, but for a very specific reason. So let me give you my three initial bad points about the game, the things that I noticed straight away, and three positives of the game that I also noticed within the first 5 minutes of the sim. And just a quick correction there, I just automatically, it's just part of my nature, I keep saying game, but I naturally mean sim. This is a genuine sim to me. And so the first three negatives that I found almost straight away or noticed straight away, and the first one was when you're sitting still on the track, so at the start finish line and you're ready to take off, there didn't feel a lot of sense of force feedback on the initial takeoff. Now I use a very odd 240 wheel rotation because I'm trying to mimic the early classic Formula 1 cars or Formula 1 cars in general. In other words, a very tight turning circle, only going to 6 from 12 to 6 when I turn the wheel. So all of that was fantastic. The feeling of moving from side to side and gaining control in a drift, as you might see in the video, was terrific. But just on initial takeoff, I didn't feel much. Now, this is the first 5 minutes that I've owned the game, so it could just be some simple setting that I haven't bothered to test. So take that very lightly, and also given that it's a beta as well. And the second negative is very, very niche and very narrow. It's only really for those people that not only use VR, but probably record as a creator for YouTube. And that was that it still had that awful thing that Project Cars 2 had, and that is that when you Alt-Tab to go to your desktop or start the recording software or something, it will get locked into the top left corner. And I found with Project Cars 2, the only way to get around that seemed to be to set it to, instead of full screen, in mirror mode, but as mirror mode in full screen, and then you were able to use your VR to move the arrow to where you wanted to, and that seemed the only way I could get around it. But yeah, it's very frustrating when you're locked into that corner. So I had to keep Alt-tabbing till I got control of the mouse, move it to a certain point, and then quickly Alt-tab and try and do what I was doing. Otherwise it went and locked itself back into that top left corner. And so the third negative, well, the third negative will actually be strangely my biggest positive. And so from a racing sim point of view, you could argue that it's maybe too simplistic, in the sense that there was a period, it might still be running, where Race Room had all its content open to everyone to try. And I gave it a go, but I found all the settings and everything so complicated and confusing that I just didn't connect with it. But from that amateur point of view, in the sense that it was like Race Room is a fantastic game, but it's like you would argue that a piece of clay is fantastic, but you need the moulder to mould it into some incredible design or shape or purpose. And I felt that I just didn't have the initial skills to mould it very quickly, this is Race Room, into something useful. And so I gave up in frustration. But the negative about this game, which to me is a positive, is that it might, for those really high-end sim races like R Factor 2 and things like that, it might be similar to Automobilista 1, that it might be just a little too simplistic, but I don't think so. So let's move now onto the 3 positives that hit me straight away. And so the first positive that I noticed almost straight away for me was this does not feel like Project Cars 2. I barely play, I have the full version, but I barely play it just because, again, I just don't connect with it, especially the sound. There's something irritating I find with the sound, but this force feedback wise and handling wise does not feel like Project Cars 2. And this is where it is the biggest positive, was that I did very few changes to the settings, just basically set up my wheel as any person normally would, and it felt fantastic right out of the box. Great force feedback as far as the turning and the feel on the road, instantly accessible, and fantastic VR as well. It is probably the only other game to Assetto Corsa where I felt, oh, this looks incredible. Now, I do think that Project Cars 2 in VR looks incredible as well, but for me, this was another step up. This is fantastic straight out of the box. Now, the second positive, again, is very niche and narrow because you have to be a VR user, but I instantly noticed it, and you might pick it up when I show you the race after this, which was that it gives you a target similar to a first-person shooter, and if you move, the target follows you or your headset as you look at things, and if you hold it just for a few seconds on any part of the menu, it acts like a mouse button. So it just takes 2 or 3 seconds and then it triggers it, and I thought that was fantastic, just being able to leave my hands on the wheel and just look at whatever I wanted to operate. But you know, the one slight thing might be if you get frustrated at that 1 or 2 second delay, just to make sure that it understands that that's what you want to do. But I thought that idea at leaving your hands free on the wheel was very, very clever. And so finally, why do I think that one of the negatives with this sim being so simplistic, one of its biggest strengths or biggest positives? Well, that's because of one simple word: accessibility. The thing that struck me straight away with starting the game or the sim was how easy it was to navigate. All the menus seemed logical. Everything that you're looking for seemed in a logical place, at least to me. It's the only other game. My favourite game is Assetto Corsa, and you're welcome in the comments to give your opinions on what you think. But with games like R Factor 2 and Race Room, now this is debatable, of course, but I find them more confusing and harder to set up. They're probably brilliant games, and I don't deny that. But as far as that piece of clay that I was saying, where you've got to mould them into shape. Now, Assetto Corsa is like that as well, arguably, especially with Content Manager. But I just found both Assetto Corsa and especially Automobilista 2 very easy and accessible to understand straight off. And the thing that strikes me with this game, and why I consider it the biggest positive, is because I think it's going to appeal to the sim racers who are at the far end, you know, maybe want good control and VR and all that, but also very accessible to the beginners. Very easy to navigate, very easy to control, and simplistic in the sense that it doesn't alienate the key audience that's going to make sim racing better in the future, and that is beginners. And to me, Automobilista 2 covers that in spades. So now let's give you an example of a very quick 3-lap race. But just before we do, I wanted to stress that this is, an amateur impression. So if you want to see a more professional impression, because this was already just recently done by a channel called R/VR Closet. I'll have a link in the description to his video, but I had to do the V8 Supercars on Adelaide, being an Australian. So this is a very simple race. The AI is set to 100, and I don't really drive it properly. It's just in the excitement to do a few laps just to see what it's like. So please keep that in mind. Okay, so this is Michael signing out for Single Racer. I'll catch you next time. See you later, and let's go racing. Oh, and that's in AMS2 beta style.